All right, so this is the Android testing talk. We're talking about testing and specifically the Google Cloud Test Lab. So the first half of the talk will be mainly lecture-based, and the last half will be sort of interactive that you guys can sort of walk through along with it. So first off, I'm John Shelley. Like I said earlier, I worked at Huddle for about 7 months now. I'm on the video playback squad, which pretty much means I deal with the playback of video on our Android app. Pretty straightforward. If you want to reach me, Twitter's probably the best place if you have any questions or anything like that. And previously, before this, I was a student at Iowa State for software engineering, and also working as a partial technical co-founder of a startup called Bot, which was a Techstars company, if anybody's familiar with accelerator programs. So if you have any questions about entrepreneurial stuff and startups and stuff like that, raising money, feel free to ask those questions as well. For those that don't know about Huddle, we've talked at a couple of mobile meetups too, so if you've been there, you might know about us. We're a sports video company. One of our mottos is we help coaches and athletes win. It's basically a full video analysis tool from any computer or mobile device for any type of athlete, all the way from club and youth sports to elite. The Premier League in Europe and almost every NBA team is one of our clients, so it's super awesome. Headquarters is in the Haymarket in Lincoln, building a new office out there right now. We also have an office in downtown Omaha, and a lot of other places like London, Boston, and so forth. So if you have any questions about Huddle, feel free to hit me up after. And thanks to the Huddle marketing and hiring team, we got some swag. So I'll be handing out some swag throughout the presentation if you answer a question correctly. So we got about 4 t-shirts, some computer stickers, and random junk that you guys can grab. So treat them too if you like the talk and if you like the swag. So the talk will be laid out into 3 parts, 3 main topics. Like I said, testing specifically on Android and how to do it effectively. There's a lot of ways to test on Android, but not of them are as effective as you might think. And specifically the architecture behind what makes it effective. And finally, the Google Cloud Test Lab. Currently it's in beta, so you can't actually get a public production release, but you can get your Google Cloud project whitelisted. If you let me know, I can get you hooked up with the director's email address to do that. So, first swag question, why do we need tests? Really simple. Anybody?
Make our manager happy.
That's a good one, and I'll accept it. T-shirt?
Sure, yeah.
Large or extra large?
Large.
So, anybody else, non-swag handouts, but if anybody else has any other answers.
So your customers will be happy.
Yes, that is one of them.
Ensure the quality of the product.
Yes, those are all great responses. So catch your mistakes in your code. That's obviously the #1 reason for testers. Confidently make more changes and refactors. Leverage regression testing when you're adding new features. You might add a new feature and then not realize that it actually did affect an old feature, and stuff starts to break. Make our users happy is the #1 reason I think that we should make tests. And why not? I was going to say 2015, but it's actually 2016 now. We should be writing tests. Android has made it a lot easier. Specifically, Google has made it a lot easier for us to write tests now these days as well. So, moving forward. Next swag question. Does anybody know what types of tests are there for Android?
Unit integration.
Not integration. Unit test is
Instrumentation.
Instrumentation, there you go. T-shirt?
Sure.
Large or extra large?
Large.
All right, down to 2 more shirts. Yeah, so the answer is correct. We have unit tests and instrumentation tests. They both live in the test folder in your project and the Android test folder. So next swag question. Can anybody tell me a difference between the two? What describes a unit test and what describes an instrumentation test?
I guess the unit test is purely like functional code, whereas the Android test would be the UI side.
Correct. Extra large shirt work?
Extra large, yeah.
All right, there we go. See, this works better than I thought. People actually answer questions. So yes, that is correct. There's a lot of differences between the two. The unit tests are going to be the location of our local test. What that means is that a couple of things. They're going to be using JUnit 4 primarily for the actual creation of these tests and the methods of these tests. They're going to run in the JVM, and they're not going to try to use the Android framework. So there are going to be libraries out there like RoboElectric, I believe, and some other ones like maybe Robotium that actually do inject the Android framework. But it's not the best practice, actually. If you were to use the Android framework straight out of the box in your unit test, you're actually going to get stubbed calls, and it's going to end up with failed methods. So that's why Android sort of says, don't do this. And since it's on the JVM, it's super fast. So you can run a suite of tests in a matter of seconds or minutes, much like any Java developer, enterprise developer would do so. Where Android tests come into play, this is going to be the location of our instrumentation test. We'll be using, you can use JUnit, but you'll also be using Espresso mainly. Espresso is a third-party library created by Google, used specifically for instrumentation tests. This is sort of the new way of doing things moving forward, compared to a lot of the old deprecated code that Android's been piling up on. That might have got cut off. We're good. It runs on the device emulator, or now the cloud, so that's awesome. And it does use the Android framework. So we'll be able to grab a view from our UI and check to see, does that contain a certain piece of text, or does a certain view contain a certain color object as its background, stuff like that that you would think to put in your unit test, but actually shouldn't go there. One thing to think about, though, is to consider a mock flavor. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Gradle system yet, a flavor is just a way of basically adding a different variant to your build system. And what you can do with a mock flavor is basically say, in all of your mock files that you don't want to actually hit your API. So you're going to actually basically just stub back a return call from your API. In the example I'll provide later, it's going to be like a notes API that you can create notes and delete notes and return a set of notes. So you'll just stub back a list of notes. That way, you don't care about testing your API. You don't care if your API tests work. You just care about, does your UI reflect if your API gives you the correct results. And that sort of goes back to the dependency inversion principle that I noted there. So just a nice thing to add if you have the time. I know a lot of times it's development first and you don't really care as much about that, but it is cool to add that you can do that. So another thing to watch out for is idling resources. This is something to do with Espresso when you're doing tests. For the most part, Espresso is actually super smart. Since it's built by Android's team, it knows a lot of things. So let's say, for example, you have an async task. Espresso knows that that async task is running on your UI, and it will actually wait for that async task to finish before it does its next call on your test method. But if you don't have things that are like Android specific, say you're making an API call with a third-party library or something that it doesn't know about. One example I had was Picasso. I use Picasso from Square for my image processing. You basically start an idling resource before the process happens, and once that process is finished, so Espresso knows when to actually wait for that to happen. Before that, you would actually see a lot of sync thread waits in your UI test, and it's actually bad practice. So this is actually just a counter method that counts an idling resource and counts it back down. So, and there will be resources at the end too, so if anybody wants to learn more about this from their websites. The one difference also about instrumentation tests, they are slow-ish. That's being because they're running on a device, or an emulator is even slower, or even the cloud, it's still going to be slower than the JVM. And that's why we should limit most of our testing to, like, I don't know the exact metric, but I would say close to about 75% of your tests should be unit tests. And you still want instrumentation tests, but more or less you want to be doing unit tests because they're fast and they can test the actual business logic. If you are testing on an instrumentation test or on a device or emulator, you can actually turn off hardware animations by going into the developer options. Turning things down, you can scale from 2x to 1x, 0.5, and completely turn them off, and that'll speed things up quite a bit. So here is an example of what a unit test would look like. It's pretty verbose without seeing the actual full test class, but I didn't have enough time, I think, to actually show off the entire class. So basically, this is just a test method to say, like, load the notes from the repository and load them into the view. And so we're going to use what's called a presenter object to load our notes. The presenter object is a pure Java object, so we're going to just call a load notes method. And then the next chunk of code is just saying that our callback is captured. So we're going to verify that our repository's get notes method is actually called. And then we actually capture its callback, because then we can actually mock what the callback capture actually returns using a mock value. And so then at the very bottom, we're actually going to verify that the progress indicator is hidden and the notes are shown in the UI. So this is a basic unit test moving forward in Android. You'll notice like the global variables aren't there, so you don't actually see the types. Like I said, I extracted out of the full Java class. But one thing to know is that the entire Android framework isn't present in this test class whatsoever. This is all pure Java objects, so it runs on the JVM just like that. What you're testing for is if a given method is called, does it return what I expect it to? And if it does return what I expect it to, do following methods get called as well? So it's more just the business logic of what happens, not if things are displayed on the UI like they should be. Whereas this, this is the UI test. So we're going to add notes to a notes list. This is using Espresso, and besides these first two lines, two strings, you'll notice every other chunk of code starts with an onView method. OnView is like the signature Espresso method to start with. Basically, we're going to use onView to get an ID, which returns us a view, and then perform operations on it. So like the first one will perform a click to add a note, click on the add note button, we'll then add some title with a type text operation from Espresso into there. We'll save the note, and then we'll scroll down in our notes list to the added note by finding its description, and then verify that the note is displayed on the screen. So all UI-based, you don't care about any functionality, you just care about the actual UI itself. Is it doing what I expect it to do? Does it display what I expect it to display? All using Espresso, all runs on the device or emulator. Not as fast, but it still verifies that things happen like we want it to. This is super important, especially for our users, because we want to make sure our users are happy. Does this test do what it's expected to do for our users? If our users had a note, we don't want to just like see something else that the note wasn't created. So yeah. Any questions about this before I move forward, like with some more stuff? Good. Cool. So that lends itself to the architecture. You'll notice that I had in that unit test some sort of architectural language. Can anybody guess what architecture I'm going to recommend is the best that lends itself to all the unit testing and instrumentation in Android?
MVP.
Yes. But you already got something, so I'm not going to give you
Keep
anything.
it coming.
One person.
Take a pen.
So yes, MVP does lend itself really well to testing on Android. We've at Huddle tried a bunch of things. We started off on mainly MVC basis, and even tried a little bit of MVVM when it came to the new binding framework for some sort of just beta features. But MVP has really lent itself well to testing. If anybody doesn't know MVP, it's closely related to any other MV design pattern out there. The model provides and stores the internal data, the view handles the display of data, and user actions are forwarded to the presenter. The presenter sits between the model and the view. It coordinates the UI with the data, ensuring that they're in sync. So basically, the presenter, in this case on Android, if you're creating a presenter object, it should be all of that Java. Like it shouldn't have any Android framework code in it. You could have like annotations, like non-null annotations and such that are imported from Android frameworks. But besides that, there should be no view objects, no async tasks, none of that kind of stuff. So here's a quick diagram too, taken off the web, for those that don't completely understand it. And then this would be like what a notes application would look like. This is taken from a Google Code Lab that came out during the Dev Summit recently in December. So basically, like the notes activity would be an entry point into our app. It really does nothing. It's just going to host the notes fragment. And then we'll have what's called a notes contract object. which is just the interface container that holds two other interfaces, which I'll show on the next slide. The view is just a contract that defines the view layer for this feature, and the user actions listener defines the interaction between the view and the presenter layers. So it's literally just the presenter contract. And the notes fragment is the concrete implementation of the view layer. So it'll extend from the, or it'll implement the view interface contract. And the notes presenter is the presenter layer. So it implements the notes contract user actions listener. And it has a reference to the view to update it when the model actually changes. So here's what those two contracts actually look like. We'll have an interface for the view, such as set the progress indicator, show the notes, show add a note, show note detail UI. And you'll notice that these are all sort of like show or set or usually display something, because it's actually things that your view should be doing. A lot of times in our fragments, we'll have public methods that are, like start refreshing or something like that. But if you adhere to this principle, then you wouldn't have any public methods that aren't overridden in the contract. Because any public functional methods that you create in your fragments should be cohesive to the contract, so that way your presenter can actually handle the logic for it. And then in our presenter contract, we'll have things such as load notes, add new note, open note details, things that aren't tied directly to the UI, but things that need to happen regardless. So like for example, if you were to click on show notes in your view, it might call load notes, and then load notes might actually get a callback from your repository, and then do something like show all the notes detail UI or something like that. So it's a back and forth, and it seems like a lot of redundant code, especially if you go through the code labs. Going through the code labs myself, I was like, this seems sort of stupid, but after realizing how it ties directly to testing, it just makes your life so much easier to have that testing confidence. Yeah, so is there any questions about the MVP stuff? I went over it briefly, and I feel like each of these separately could be their own talks, so there's a lot of high-level stuff right now.
So, Mustafa and I worked a lot with GWT, which is MVP-based, kind of the forerunner, actually, in that respect. And I guess I always heard that the view shouldn't really know about the presenter, that the presenter should call into the view, but not the other way around. But you're saying that's not the way it is in Android?
Well, so I don't want to say it's not the way in Android, because Android is, open to interpretation. Right. But the way like I've seen it done via the code labs, you'll have a object. It's a presenter object that you don't actually know about. The view doesn't know about the presenter object, but it does have a reference to it. So that way it can call those things, sort of.
It doesn't handle the heavy lifting. It doesn't. The code of loading the data.
Right. The load data, like the data loading, will happen in the presenter, and the presenter knows about the view. The view doesn't know who the presenter is, but it has like an interface class that it can tie back to. So probably not. I don't know if that's different from what you're talking about.
It's pretty similar.
Okay. So
Do you do the same thing like on models? You have like an interface to interact between like the presenter and the model?
mm-hmm. Yep. It'll be similar like that. I haven't touched the model, but I've seen it done in our Java code already. Some people have done that as well. So.
Can you show your slide again?
The unit test one? Yeah, this right here. Yeah, so now that we understand the MVP concept, we're basically, like this actual test class right here would be called notes, I think it's like notes detail presenter class. So we're actually testing the presenter itself in this unit test. Since all of your business logic is happening in the presenter, we can specifically say we just want to test the presenter class.
Is there a repository in the model?
So the repository is actually just like, it's sort of more on the model side of things, but it's not actually the model, it's just a data aggregator. So like, it's not tied to the MVP architecture itself, it's sort of outside of it. Have you heard of the clean architecture? So it's along the lines of clean, where the clean architecture has an MVP, and then one layer outside of that is your data repository, and then I think there's like one more layer outside of clean, like I can't remember what it is. So, sort of the same idea though.
What does verify actually?
Verify, I believe, is a JUnit thing.
It's a Mockito.
Mockito.
It returns basically a mock implementation
Right.
of that
Yeah, so we're mocking the repository and we mock the view. So yeah, you're right.
And the verify just basically allows you to call those methods on it, doing some. That's like a whole Mockito talk on its own. Though.
There could be 5 talks.
Yeah.
Isn't that verifying those methods called?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
With that value. Yes.
Yep. Correct. So the only actual Java object in here that's being used is the presenter. We're mocking the repository, and we're mocking the view, and we're also using a special, I think it's part of Mockito, is the callback capture.
Yep.
To then say, once this has been verified that the get nodes method of our repository has been called, we're going to capture its callback and just put whatever callback we want in there instead. So that's part of Mockito.
So the presenter implements that on action listener.
User actions change.
User action. Okay.
Yep. You can name that whatever you want. You can say presenter, but
Right. But then you just pass that back to the fragment or whatever, and
okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe later this year we can have an MVP talk.
maybe next time.
So yeah, any more questions about that? Or... Cool. Moving on. Quite a bit of time. That's good. All right, so this is Google Cloud Test Lab. I'll give a quick overview of some stuff, and then we'll dig into the interactive portion.
Yep.
Fun parts. Okay, so Google Cloud Test Lab is a cloud-based infrastructure for testing your Android apps. What that means is that you have a wide variety of devices and device configurations that are sort of predetermined on Google's test page. It allows you to get logs, videos, screenshots, and some more different metadata of your test, things that you wouldn't normally get. You can also exercise your app automatically looking for crashes. So say you haven't run a single unit test or a single instrumentation test, you can still upload your APK and it'll find any crashes for you along the way, which we'll talk about towards the very end of the demonstration. And there is a web solution, Android Studio solution, and a command line solution. So last t-shirt swag question, can anybody tell me why these 3 solutions would help out a company?
Well, I think the command line would be good for like running build tests, Android Studios for the developer themselves, and web. I'm not sure exactly, just to have another platform on which to run.
Yeah, that's pretty much it though. Like, so at Huddle, we can easily implement this right now. The web, we actually have what's called quality assurance. So we have QAs that sit beside developers and just test crap. So they can actually just grab an APK and upload it to the web without knowing any development stuff. Android Studios for the developers, and the command line use G-Cloud SDK. And that'd be perfect for CI machines like TeamCity or Jenkins and stuff. So you already got it straight now.
Yep.
You want something else?
Yeah, that's
Okay. If I have another shirt question, geez. So setup, hopefully everybody's got it set up. Android Studio 1.4 plus. Join the Google group and getting a sample code. If you don't have Android Studio and you still want to participate, go ahead and grab the sample code because you can do stuff in the command line because there's a Gradle wrapper installed.
Let's go.
All right, we're back.
Awesome.
After a short intermission. All right, so anybody that has laptops out, go ahead, pull up the code and command line, or if you want Android Studio, go ahead and import the project now. Basically, you're going to navigate to the basic sample under UI and Espresso. I think it's that. Forgot to add it in there, but it's so if you cd into UI/espresso, or import the basic sample under that folder into Android Studio. We'll get to the basic sample project main directory. You're going to run the following commands to build the app binaries and test binaries. So once everybody gets done with this step, we'll move on. All right, does anybody have it imported in their Android Studio yet? Is everybody good?
We're good.
All right, then from Android Studio, since don't follow these directions anymore, basically you'll have to open the Gradle tab, usually on the far right side of Android Studio, and run these 2 commands from Gradle, because that Gradle tab will allow you to do that. So you'll basically extend the app directory, and then run those 2 tests. And they have to be letter for letter. Like you might see one that says assemble, debug, Android test, release. You don't want to do that. It has to be letter for letter, word for word. So for those that have built it or are in the process of building it, you should be able to find the binaries at the following. So from that project directory of base example, you can ls or cd into app build outputs APK. And there might be 3 APKs, but we only want 2 of them. So we're going to want the app debug unaligned, which is our app APK, and the app debug Android test unaligned APK. So just hold on to those, pull up a Finder or Windows Explorer tab, whatever you use, and make reference to those. I'm going to move on. If somebody needs me to come back to the slide, just shout it out, and we can get your files.
Is there a reason why you're doing the unaligned APK versus the other one? Does it matter?
I don't know if it matters.
Okay.
Honestly, but
Okay. This is one you picked.
That's what
Okay.
told me to do. So.
Okay.
All right, so now we're going to run your test on the web. So remember, there was 3 different ways to do it: the web, Android Studio, and the CLI. So we're going to navigate to this cloud test lab URL to run our first test. It's a super long URL. Do people want me to leave it up here, or should I post it in the dev meetup?
Yeah, post in the meetup.
Post in the meetup?
Yeah.
Could you do it in that Google group?
Ooh.
Yeah, so I can do that. Let's do that.
That way we're not flooding people who are here.
Yeah. What does it mean?
Well, they should be here. Ask.
I agree, but
Yeah.
they might appreciate
We're
it.
shaming them. Well, you don't know what this means.
So the question is, how do I get to the Google groups?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably
Turn yourself
Yeah.
policing out of.
Yeah, and then there's a list of the menu off to the left. You can click to go to the Omaha.
Okay, that should have worked. Hopefully you guys are at the Google groups. You can go to this page and you'll see this. Basically what I've already done beforehand is create a Google Cloud project. Got the Cloud project whitelisted to have this enabled for the Cloud Test Lab because it's in beta.
What do you mean you got the cloud project whitelist? What does that mean?
Well, so the director of the Cloud Test Lab project was at the Android Barbecue down in Austin, and so he allows you to email him and get it whitelisted. Because right now it's not open to the public at all. So if anybody wants this, let me know. I can give you his email. So basically that's the way they're doing it right now until it's in production. And right now, so there's other things that do this. I think Amazon has a way of doing this as well. It charges a fee. Right now, Google's is free. So I don't know if it'll ever charge, but since it's free, we're going to use it. Is everybody at this website right now, though?
Okay.
If you go to the groups that refresh, you should be able to click there. Just on
All right.
Are you going to send those slides later?
Yeah, I'll post them.
Yeah, okay, we need them later, okay.
I'll post
Thanks.
them.
All right, okay.
All right, right side, are we good? Move on, left side, we're good?
I think
Back? All right, so basically you're going to upload those APKs that you just had into the Google Cloud Test Lab. So we're going to click Run Instrumentation Test. And then from there, you'll be able to upload your app APK and your test APK. So go ahead and make note of where you had your previous APKs at in your Finder or Windows Explorer. Upload them here, here, and then go ahead and select the device matrix. So the device matrix allows you to run it against physical devices and virtual devices, which are emulators basically, and select an API level. So this will just create a giant matrix of devices and API levels to test against. So maybe the Galaxy S4 actually can test against an 18, 19, 20, then it'll do so against all API levels. Some devices, like I think a Nexus 9, will show up as being not supported on API level 22 yet, which is strange since it's a Nexus. But on the test lab, it's not supported.
So does this, for the physical devices, those are actual physical devices?
Physical
so
devices.
They just have this huge room of devices? Or?
Most likely. I don't know. I don't ask questions, but
Yeah.
I think that has some sort of emulators, right?
yeah.
No, they're probably real devices if it says physical
Yeah,
devices.
well, yeah. These are real devices. The virtual devices are the emulators.
Huh,
So they
cool.
legitimately have a room of devices. We had planned on doing this in Huddle, actually having a room of devices in Omaha based on this, but now that this is available, why not use it? All right, so for people that are here, go ahead, upload your APKs, select the matrix, choose whatever you want, choose some API levels. If it's not supported, it will just actually skip that test and mark it as not ran. It won't fail the test. And go ahead and click Start Test. And you should see an output, a list of different tests that are running the matrix. And we'll move on. Is everybody able to run the test on the web at least? It takes a while from the run if you're choosing physical devices. Like I think I chose like 6 physical devices with different API levels, and it took probably about half an hour to run.
So I shouldn't select all of them.
Well, I mean, you can navigate away from the browser page and come back to it. So
And then do all.
So that's the benefit of that.
Start 60.
Does anybody have any questions about the web solution? If not, we'll move forward with the Android Studio solution because we might not have time. I'll just run through the notes actually because it gets pretty tedious from there. Everybody's good on the web.
So this is kind of off topic, I suppose, but do you guys use this on your CI server?
Not yet. We're pushing for it.
Okay, because that would be interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be.
I've heard if you talk to the Google Cloud Tesla team, they have actual people that are in sponsored beta users that actually use it for their production stuff. But we haven't at Huddle. At Huddle, actually, because we're more heavily iOS dependent in development, then we actually use Appium and Selenium-based mobile drivers to test against iOS and Android at the same time because it's a pretty much universal app.
Yeah.
It's not something that I would prefer as an Android developer, but it's just a current solution.
So you use Appium?
Yeah.
You like it? I've used it. It's
I don't use it a lot. Our QA team uses it more often than that, and they like it for what it's worth.
because then it just pretty much use the UI automator and just click through.
Yep. Any questions about web stuff? Otherwise, we can just cover the studio stuff real quick. All right, moving on. So basically, I'll post these slides online so people can follow through with Studio. There's a code lab as well. So a lot of the stuff I've talked about today is in the code lab. Those resources are at the end too. But basically, you want to follow the instructions here to create what's called a Studio VM options file. It gives you some predefined defaults, and then you're just going to add one line at the very end of the file, which enables Google Cloud Testing plugin, which is only available for Android Studio 1.4 and above. That's what I was saying, like if you didn't have Studio 1.4, you couldn't do this part of it. But what it'll do, when you go to your run debug configurations, you can create an Android test like you would normally, but when you go to select your target device, you can actually choose a cloud device matrix. Instead of saying the USB device or an emulator, you can actually choose that cloud device matrix that is hosted on Google Cloud Test Lab. You'll actually sign in with your Google Cloud account. I think in Android Studio, in the very top right corner, you can sign in with your Google credentials, and it'll pull in all of your Google Cloud projects for you. So if you do this at home, I'll keep this Google Cloud project Android Dev Meetup for quite a while, so you can actually sign in and use that if you're next to the Google group. And you can actually click that little 3 dots right here to change your matrix as well. So like the sample configuration gives you 18 different devices. If you click this, you can actually change it to have more, minus some, etc. So basically here's just the following is to select the basic sample directory from the sample code folder. So let's see. It's actually going to work. Yeah. It's the same idea, I guess. So create an Android test like you would any other instrumentation test. Yeah, so once you click apply, you run the test, you'll actually see basically the exact same things you'll see from the web when you're running it from Studio. You'll actually be able to see, I think, some of the stack trace if things were to break in the UI. Maybe you're trying to locate a view that isn't present. It should be able to show that in your test suite and show you what's actually breaking. So that's one of the nice things about running it in Studio instead of the web. You get that nice handy stack trace. So moving on, we have one more section left, and that is what if I don't have any test? What if you just have an APK and you just want to test against it? Well, there's things called RoboTest. It's a better version of Android Monkey Runner if anybody used that previously in older versions. Basically, it does a depth-first search traversal of all your screens, navigating outwards and then downwards. So again, we can navigate to that site. If you're on the site currently, if you go back to the very first link I sent you, there was 2 options: run an instrumentation test or run a RoboTest. If you click run a RoboTest and then just upload your APK, configure the test matrix once again and start the test, it will just start going through the app and clicking stuff and finding out where there's crashes.
So you're saying theoretically this could test your whole app UI and see if stuff crashes.
Yes. But, okay, last SWOT question. Why do we not care about the entire app being tested against?
Because you can't test the UI.
Well, you are testing UI though.
Well, you can't test the way it
Don't
looks.
Yeah.
Test use cases.
Yes. Use cases. Because your users, you might be able to go through the app and do certain things, but if your users' use cases aren't, you might see a failing test or something and be like, this is a failing test. Crap, I gotta fix this. But also at the same time, will that test actually happen in production? Maybe not. It's one of those like edge cases, like, do we actually care about this sort of thing? Because you could be running like, and then plus also on top of that, it's going to take forever to test against too. I don't know. There's just things like, yes, it benefits, but also at the same time it doesn't. So it's just one of those things that people go through. So. That's it. Congratulations, you guys passed the Cloud Test Lab.
I've never seen it.
Here's some resources at the bottom. The very first resource is Android testing, specifically MVP architecture.
Post a link to that GIF.
Google search, man. Just Android GIF, very first one. And Cloud Test Lab. So that is it from me. Does anybody have any final questions? If not, there's one shirt left. Who wants it extra large? First thing is opened. There we go. So.
Is there a way to, like, our app requires a login, so you can't do anything until you're actually logged in, and then there's a million screens, but until then there's only one.
Yes.
So is there a way to tell that RoboTest to log in, then go do a bunch of stuff?
That's another reason I'm pointing back to, like, I don't believe right now with RoboTest you can. I haven't tested it out myself. With like Espresso, you obviously can.
Yeah.
With Espresso, you test actual views themselves.
Yeah.
But the RoboTest, I believe that wouldn't work. I know there's other solutions as well. I think TestObjects.com is another solution that does this exact same thing. They're pretty pricey though themselves. You can actually say certain things like, for my very first screen, I have a login screen and I need to log in credentials. So
Interesting.
there's other options out there. And I'm assuming it's a matter of time until the RoboTest actually allow for it. So.
Could just like seed the database with a fake user to, I guess.
Yeah.
Potentially or something.
Do you know if the RoboTest does like use any static analysis tools, or is it just like a monkey runner thing?
According to the documentation, it says advanced monkey runner.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that just took the Android's monkey runner and sent it off of that.
And you can do a lot of that in Android Studio.
So
So for the testing that, this cloud-based testing, so just to test UI side, that's all, yes?
yes,
So there is any tools or something to test end-to-end, to call the services, to get the data, to make sure that, we are getting the data we expect, everything, or just UI side?
from the API, you mean?
Yeah.
That's something I'm going to cover. So there's unit tests which cover your basic functional tests. UI testing should be primarily your actual UI.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I didn't test on was API testing.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I haven't looked into myself, so honestly don't know. I can't answer that question by myself. But you could theoretically use UI testing for your API testing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's sort of that responsibility, like who should actually care? Because then you're testing against UI and the API, and it sort of seems like a mixed bag of potential. It's going to get flaky, basically. So
Was it Lightning Talks at the OJOG December? Maybe it was in like September, I forget. They talked about Gatling, testing your web service API.
that's not familiar.
Sounded pretty good. I haven't used it yet. But there's other ones out there too.
For sure, yeah.